Hello everyone, and welcome for this new session on LaunchPy and the Python wrapper for Launch API. And I wanted to follow up a bit on the creation part of LaunchPy. And so I ended up doing an installation of a new extension. So it will also help us in the video. And in order to do that, I will give you my process so I could debug a bit and it will be less hard to follow for you. So you remember that you need to have, you can actually have the catalog extension here. And this is from the previous video. So if you don't, if you jump here, you probably will be lost. But what I did is I get the catalogs um, and I get the analytics extension from the catalog. And then I can look at the different name in the attributes so I can see, and I can see that the first one is the Adobe Analytics. So what we could do, we could try to create an extension, and if you remember that if you go um, Shift tab, then you can see what is required. You need the ID, you need the settings, and you need the descriptor. Um, Problem is that the descriptor and the settings are very dependent on the extension itself. So in our case, we will take the most complicated one because there is this Adobe Analytics descriptor and setting to be set, but sometimes it can be just empty depending on the extension you want to install. So I get the ID, oh, sorry, I get the ID, and the ID is here, and it's a EP ID, and it will after that give you a new ID, EX, and the EP are the shop, like the catalog ID, and EX in that case will be the everything that with EX is your own property ID. It's unique to your ID, so if you install Adobe Analytics in another property, you will use the same EP ID, but you will get a different EX ID. Okay, that being said, then most of the time, as I was saying, you can get the settings empty, and then you can have here the descriptor. So the descriptor could be empty, but if I'm doing that, actually, so let's look. I'm in my demo tutorial that I was using before, and I don't have anything here. I don't have the Adobe Analytics. I'm trying to create that, and you see invalid syntax. So invalid settings and syntax and so on. So let's try to. I know by default that the syntax could be an object or something. So let's try to get that, and let's try to get Adobe Analytics the name here, just to show Adobe Analytics here as a descriptor. And this will give me as well an error, and it will tell me it's an invalid delegate descriptor ID. And it gives you a helpful um, a helpful element that it requires a delegate ID of a certain type. And you can find this delegate ID if you go to your extension that you have retrieved. So I'm in the catalog now, and first on Adobe Analytics, I look at the attribute and the configuration. And from here, you can see that I have this ID, and this ID in the configuration is the delegate descriptor ID. So if I'm doing that now, it will now show me again an error for the settings. And you see that the definition also, so now the error is also getting more specific, and it's telling you that it requires the following property: library code. And what is the library code? And if you, again, so same place, you go to the extension catalog of the extension you want. And if you look at the different element, you see that there is a schema and there is some requirements. And here they say it requires a library code. And the library code could be of the following, and it requires the library code requires source at the minimum, and library code also requires a type require account, and so forth and so on. So you could actually like require it requires a tracker variable and so forth. It gets quite complicated, as I was saying, so I will always encourage you to try to do that through the UI first, because those heavy lifting has been done by the UI team pretty neatly, I would say. And at the end, it ends up being something like this. I see that I have the library code, I have the type, I have the company, I have my account, my production report suite. I can like, probably have more, and so on. So I need to save that. And then if I actually put that here, my config, at the object, it will actually not work. And I will tell you what, I will tell you why in a short moment. So I'm going to do that. And again, now library invalid setting syntax. So it tells you a syntax is missing because how launch API is messaging between the different applications is using a JSON, and at the moment we are sending a dictionary. So we need to convert that dictionary to a JSON format, and for that you can use the JSON library and import JSON, sorry, and you just transform this config, so this dictionary, into a string, and you say config. I create a new dimension, which is config JSON, and JSON you use the method dump s to create a JSON format from this into a JSON format string. If you do dump like this, it's really transform it as a JSON. JSON with S, it's transform it as a JSON string, and we are going to use that because it's how the Adobe Launch API are communicating to each other. So we do that, and now when we have the config JSON, you can now use that, and normally you see that up everything has been created. I have a new EX elements that have been, and if I look at my installation now, I have my Adobe Analytics extension that are being has been installed here. And if I go in my configuration, I see that the test is the production library, and nothing has been selected here. Again, what I would encourage and what I did in the background, I didn't look at this nightmare thing and try to figure out what is required, what is the value, and so forth. What I did is that I try to install it directly here, and when I install it, I use the network, and I looked at the reactor because they are using the API in the background, and you can see I have these different elements, and you look at the payload, and you can find here the settings and what is actually being used. You copy paste that, you have your template, and now, sorry, if I want to automate that with different production, let's say I can do that now. I can say like this is my production dim, and the production dim is a loop that is going to be replaced by something else. You can do a lot more automation based on that, but I would recommend you to use the UI in your advantage to create this template. So that was a very short video. It was very packed with information. It's more for advanced users that want to use the API for automation of the creation of the properties. But I hope that was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next videos.